With Illinois as well as Cincinnati closing all restaurants until March 30th, it's becoming apparent that the restaurant industry in the United States is going to take a major hit from the coronavirus. So the question is, for those in the gig economy, those that deliver food, either part-time or for a living, how big of a hit is this going to take on earnings? And what is the possible outcome of all of these restaurant closures? It looks like this is beginning to become a bit of a trend as local states and jurisdictions are doing everything that they can to kind of incorporate more and more social distancing, and closing restaurants, which could potentially be a source for, contact and getting the coronavirus, is one step in that direction. So it looks like there could potentially be more states closing. So let's take a look at exactly what this might mean for food delivery apps like DoorDash, GrubHub, Postmates. And with this global pandemic really shaking up life as we know it for the time being, and really, with no end in sight, we don't know when this is going to get under control, people are worried about income stability. Now, there's a couple different potential scenarios here. One important thing to note is that Illinois restaurants, while closing through March 30th, are only closed to dine-in orders. That means that takeout is still going to exist, and food delivery apps now have an opportunity to either kind of shine or potentially do some damage to their public appearance. So they really have to step up to the plate here. And the question is can they handle this sort of responsibility to deliver food safely? One source, the New York Post, is actually saying that food delivery is completely safe as long as all parties involved are taking the necessary safety precautions to deliver that food with cleanliness, washing hands, etc. So this looks like a viable option, and I'm going to pull up a couple of charts here to show how a larger scale reaction to a pandemic like the coronavirus could potentially play out in a few different scenarios here. So this is an article from the Washington Post, and it's basically detailing a couple of different reactions that you could have to the coronavirus. The first is not reacting at all, and in this scenario, a lot of people get sick very quickly. It spreads almost exponentially. It's not the ideal scenario. And then the second scenario that they bring up is a quarantine, and that's a government-mandated quarantine, which, as far as the graphs and the charts and all the statistics are showing us, is not entirely that effective. Closing off life entirely creates panic. People leave, they move. It's not necessarily going to be effective. So the other two potential scenarios are social distancing to a moderate extent, and an even further extent of social distancing where less and less people are moving around traveling, more people are closing themselves off, but you still do allow for some sort of movement. The economy needs to keep moving, life has to go on. So things like food delivery, where only a fraction of people are out picking up food, can continue to keep life normal for people that want to work from home and just be more socially distant from others who could potentially infect them. And based upon what we're seeing from restaurant closures in Illinois and Ohio, it looks like this is the model that a lot of state governments are at least looking to achieve. They don't want to completely quarantine anyone, but they do want to cut off a lot of reasons for people to interact and potentially contract the virus. So they're looking for either a moderate or extensive social distancing, and this does allow the apps like GrubHub, DoorDash, Postmates to do a lot here. You've probably seen some emails recently from those apps, if you work from them or if you order from them, saying that no contact deliveries are an option, and urging for certain safety practices when delivering. So while a lot of drivers probably expect demand to be a little bit less over the next few weeks, or however long this really plays out for, it's still expected that food delivery continues to be a thing. But there is a lot of responsibility on these apps to operate responsibly, and the question is can they really pull it off? With drivers being independent contractors, can you really enforce food safety? Will independent contractors take this responsibility upon themselves and deliver food safely? I believe that they will. I believe that, most people have the intentions of continuing to help people, whether that's playing your part in delivering food and doing so safely. I think that, those independent contractors can do so. And this could be an opportunity, for DoorDash, GrubHub, all those apps to really showcase how they can help in a period of time like this. And I want to pull up an email from GrubHub that I thought was really cool, and it shows a few different measures that they are taking. And one of those is cutting delivery fees for restaurants. If you've been reading the news, the restaurant industry is taking major hits everywhere. In Seattle, where I'm from, there have been 40 or 50 restaurant closures, and a lot of restaurants are just laying off a big portion of the workforce. So you don't want to see people getting laid off. And, GrubHub knows this. They know that they rely on these restaurants. So it's really an action of good faith to not charge those commission fees for the time being so that the restaurants can continue to pay their employees, continue to stay in business and weather this storm. And I thought that was really cool. I thought that was very responsible of GrubHub and something to be admired and followed by other apps. And even beyond that, GrubHub shows that they're setting up some funds for the restaurants, for the drivers, for people that might be affected in this time being. It's definitely a tough time, for drivers, for anyone in the gig economy who's living, without as much of a safety net if things go wrong, without that potential unemployment, maybe relying on these earnings to pay rent, to pay the mortgage, whatever it may be. It's definitely a scary time. And, hopefully people are cutting their spending enough, and, saving up potentially so that when something like this does hit, it doesn't hit them as hard. And this will definitely play out differently, depending on what location you live in. If you're delivering food and you've noticed a, big dramatic hit on your earnings, leave a comment down below. I think that there's definitely been a slowdown, as much as people might be, taking out and ordering in more. People are also a little bit worried about a recession, so they're cutting costs, cutting spending, and food ordering, food delivery is one of those things that people might cut back on a little bit. So it's definitely a tough time, but I think that people are going to get through this, and it's going to make us better on the other side. So let me know how you've been impacted and what you're doing to kind of weather the storm, and leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Thanks for watching this video, guys. Make sure to keep staying strong, hang in there, because we can definitely make it through this one together.